Hi, welcome back to another episode of SEO On-Air. I'm your host, Aaron, and today we have Shamil Shamilov, founder of dNOVO. We talk about how he started his agency, some things he wished he knew when he was starting off, and how things have changed over the years. I hope you enjoyed this episode.
Could you give us a bit more about your history, but before, let's say, dNOVO's time? I think if we kind of dial back the clock a little bit more, there was a time, I think, where you were working with passports.
Yeah. I finished my undergrad. I got it. Then I went to Ireland to do a master's degree in political science and terrorism studies. It felt really awkward because I felt that half of my professors were former IRA members. But, I was young and idealistic, and I wanted to work in foreign affairs or international organizations. And it just happened that way that my mother actually works for United Nations and she has that job. But when I was in Dublin, I clearly remember a thought in my head that I always wanted it as a kid to do that, but I remember sitting at a lecture and I just thought that some of my classmates were very naive and, they really thought they could change the world. Where at that point, I kind of started losing hope. I like what I studied, but I wasn't lying to myself that UN or any of these organizations really make a difference. And then I was looking for a job, and I was living in Ottawa, Ontario for the time, and it's a government town. Everybody wants to get in the government. Like, that's the trend. So I just happened to find that job, and I worked there, but again, boring, monotonic, and I didn't see myself building a career in the civil service. So I went almost to work for a U.S. logistics company on a military base in Afghanistan, believe it or not. I've applied for CSIS, which is a Canadian Secret Service. I was trying to kind of soul searching and finding what I wanted to do. I worked for 2-3 months in Moscow for like a business consultancy group as well, just behind the computer office work. And I realized after doing all these things that I hate them all. And that instead of starting to think of what I want to do, like which industry, because that's, I think, the biggest mistake people make. They first think of like young people when they find themselves, they think of like, oh, I'd like to work in this industry or that industry. Half of us end up working in things we never expected. So I started thinking, what would I want my day to be like? You know what I mean? And I realized that I wanted to be an account manager. I wanted to have as much independence as I can, right? I wanted to have my own clients and build my own relationships. So just by methods of elimination and trial and error, I guess I moved to Toronto and found an unpaid job at the time at a digital marketing agency. And that kind of, in a year, he made me a partner, and we worked together for about 8 years. I was a minority, but a partner. And then about 7 years now, him and I split, and I kind of started dNOVO as, again, I say started, nothing really changed. I took all my staff, all my clients, and just rebranded and went on my own way.
Was that something that was an easy task to do? I mean, I don't think it was that easy, but kind of rebranding yourself and starting all over.
So it was very comfortable to have like a senior partner who was older, more experienced, and I have to give him a lot of credit. Taught me not just to sell and to do digital marketing, but how to manage the business. And it was a great school. So by the time I was ready to separate, I didn't have you hear people that they start their own company and they struggle a lot. And then, the first 2 years, and then they learn a lot of things. That moment happened for me when I started working in the space, right? I remember the first 6 months, it was literally like a room with no windows, a yellow pages book. This is 12, 13 years ago. And, Shamil cold calling clients and promising them to get them on Google. And I feel it broke a lot of boundaries. I wasn't getting paid for it. It broke a lot of boundaries, and it, mental stigmas that I had, and taught me to do things. I remember my first cold call, and it was like my voice was shaking. So by the time I separated and went on my own, I was running that business for the last 2 years pretty much as is, because we had a division in Florida, and he would leave for 4 months out of the year for 3 years in a row. So hiring, day-to-day office, new clients. Like I was running the office in Toronto, and he would be in Florida doing business development and selling. So that change obviously was stressful, but not as, I think, as it is for others, because at that point I was pretty, I guess, on my feet and independent.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of people, when they do kind of start it off, they're not too sure where to start or how to start, and they make those growing pain mistakes. But like you said, you kind of had those growing pains earlier on before the company actually kicked off the ground.
I always, some people like, oh, I'm a natural born entrepreneur, and I was selling, lemonade when I was like 12. I'm not that kind of a person. For me, like it kind of evolved naturally, you know what I mean? But like, and I'll tell you this much, I definitely see a value in benefiting yours. Like I must say I'm pretty good at managing people, hiring people. And I think I do a decent job. Like, we're not talking about SEO right now. We're talking about running the business. Having said that, is operations my favorite thing? Hell no. And there's some people that are better to do that. So I definitely see value where, you would get like somebody employed or maybe like a junior partner, which covers the basis that you're weak at. You know what I mean? And because then you could focus on your strength, and they can supplement your weaknesses.
So let's say that I'm currently working at this company, Stan Ventures, we're a digital marketing agency, but I want to kind of move away and start my own business, kind of like how you did, but without the same kind of experience. So as someone with no experience except besides working a little bit in a company, how do I start my own, let's say, digital marketing agency or any company for that matter?
I think it's so easy nowadays, especially in our field. I've been doing a lot of thinking last couple of years, and I realize there's a lot of industries that have very little cost to enter into the business, right? And I think digital marketing, what stops you from making your own website? Instead of Stan Ventures, call it XYZ Digital, and brand yourself and explore different avenues, right? Get clients, and it doesn't, like, depends how much time you have and how aggressive you want to go, but I think it's not, and depending what skill sets you have, some people post ads on, social media that they do this work. Some people directly contact clients. You working at Stan Ventures or somewhere else, chances are have built relationships with clients who are, who need any additional work done or have another business. So as soon as you do one, you kind of scale it up. I think the key is, and I hear this from podcasters all the time. There's so much information. You need to pick your poison. And in my business, it's the same. It's the same thing. I noticed that some people hit social really hard. Some people do podcasts really hard. I recently been in an event of a law firm who, they're okay online, nothing to write home about, although they try. But you could tell that, like, they're doing it in house and it's so. But all their business, and they're pretty successful, is they do constantly events. They attend community events. There's like a speaker series for 60 lawyers. They do charity work, right? They celebrate different minorities in the business, and it works for them, right? So the same thing for anybody starting their business. I feel like you need to pick your poison, and experiment with what you want to do to gain clients.
Right. But are there, let's say, leadership qualities that are necessary for me to kind of start this off?
Leadership qualities?
Yeah. Like, should I be more, let's say, aggressive or very laid back type?
Double-edged sword, right? So it suits your personality. It has to suit your personality, right? If you're more laid back and it's more of a consultative sale, then you can't fake it being aggressive. I get frustrated by emails like, hey, I hope you're having a great day. I notice how great work you're doing. And then they want something. They all read the same. To me, it's a waste of time. If, when I send LinkedIn messages or my assistant does it for me, I'm very direct, right? This is my name. This is what I do, right? I've worked for this. If I could be of help, right? And I always offer that value add. Truly believe in relationships, right? So if you want to pick my brain about something or you need a second opinion, I'm at your service, type of thing, right? And I'm not just saying it to get them to sign them up, but I truly believe in that. It's the same thing for you. Like if you're a laid back person, And, we had a sales guy that I clearly remember that was very relaxed, very easygoing, and very knowledgeable, right? Like consultative sales. He would, that's how he would do it, right? He would ask them questions and lure them in and offer value. But again, I do the same thing, but I think I'm a bit more aggressive, right? And again, if you don't like talking to people on the phone, you're going to do your own marketing by maybe publishing content because you feel good, like, talking on camera or running Facebook ads, right? If you're the opposite, that you might outsource or do an in-house call center, right? And then select your targets and essentially call clients and literally kind of get them that way. Maybe you attend events because that you like them, you enjoy them, right? It has to be a combination of factors. And obviously, you have to calculate your ROI, right? Like how much effort does it take?
Like you said in the beginning itself, I can't really fake my personality, but if my, let's say, leadership qualities aren't the more mainstream ones, I can work with something that is more in tune with myself.
In the beginning, to get clients, yes. If you're turning it into a business, I have this argument with my wife all the time. I think that if push comes to shove, and if you're back against the wall, right? Like you develop qualities. I have clear examples in my life of people who are introverts by default, and they like their computer and their mental stipulations and research work, but they have to communicate with clients and they work on those communication skills and they end up being, really good and excelling at them. So truly, like, if your back is against the wall, my dad said this to me once. He's like, we learn the most and we have the most progress when we have nothing to lose. It's like, Aaron, you need to get on that call and convince him, and nobody really gives a shit what you think and how you're predisposed. It's time. It's time to close. You know what I mean? So same thing here. If you're not, I'm not very technologically savvy, believe it or not. Like I work on it all the time, right? I have a lot of agency owners, not all, but some agency owners have a technical background, right? Like we have developers or this or that. They have an advantage there, but then they have to work on other qualities that perhaps, they lack. So it's always a balancing act.
Yeah, and I'm kind of glad you brought up that example because I'm very much an introvert, but I have to get on these calls and do podcasts and actually talk to people, I think, every day. So I kind of now got to that point where my back was against the wall and I had to either change or get eaten.
It's also, like, I'll tell you this, a lot of people that are extroverts and are vocal about it, they have difficulty shutting up sometimes and listening. Right. Speaking from my own experience, I have to work on it, right? Like ask more questions. And this is my former business partner, right? He was telling me that everybody could close a good client, right? Like if you're generally a nice guy and I provide value and you're just like middle down the lane, nice guy, you really like, it's, let's say the likelihood of signing up that client is easier. Now, if you're an animal in your own head and you're just very alpha as a business owner, right? And I'm trying to pitch you and you're very particular, right? Now, all of a sudden, a very small niche of people are going to be able to relate to you, you know what I mean? And get that business. And to me, as an account manager, business owner, and primarily, I look at it all the time as sales, I get a kick out of relating to people that I normally, by default, if I was going to go by what am I, introvert, extrovert, right? Like, that I could close or do business with. And I get excited when it's somebody who, generally speaking, I have lesser average of closing and I end up signing them up. Do you get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like people that are not likely to do business with you and you convince them regardless of their demeanor. Give you an example. A lot of agencies are all about Slack and all about like, terminology and communication with clients in a particular manner, like, very kind of techie West Coast. Good luck pitching, a 60-year-old lawyer or a doctor in the same terms, right? He's going to be like, oh, if you're doing corporate work, you're usually talking to corporate, people, marketing people, and, they would dig that. If you're trying to close small to medium businesses, I've met very wealthy people that, don't know how to use an iPad. right? And
Right.
use their phone for everything and have assistants to delegate. So relating to them, those tech business owners are going to have difficulty, right? So you have to kind of work with your audience and be able to adjust.
To kind of, let's say, push this hypothetical into the future. Let's say I've got my business running. I've got it kind of started up. It's still in its first year, maybe. Sorry. But if I've kind of got some offerings on the table, I've got like a little team in-house as well. I want to scale up my side of the business, but I'm wondering, should I be outsourcing it to another agency like dNOVO, or can I just build it up in-house?
Different business models, right? Like one of the guys who does really well in lawyer marketing is Chris Dreyer, and I watch his podcast regularly. And he mentioned that he realized that being stuck in operations and trying to build an in-house team, there's so much options on the market. It's much better to outsource, right? Because certain aspects of SEO work. There's a ton of companies that do white label, right? And we get emails and conversations all the time, and we work with a number that do link building or content, right? Like white label. And there's different calibers of it. So it really is what you want to do. If you are a social guy, your clients are, small to medium businesses or small businesses for that matter, and you don't want to build like a web development team, outsource your web development. Do certain things in-house. What I find, like I have a ton of vendors I work with, but the strategy, project management, and client communications we do in-house, right? And then for us, it works. Right. So meaning that like I have content managers that give tasks and monitor my content writers. My content writers, I technically been working with them for years, and they're not companies. They're like sort of smaller outfits. So just really subcontractors. But I always have the option to, switch them, pick a new one. Right. Like, and again, if you're running a business and you're doing marketing inside a company and you're at a certain size, I think it makes sense to maybe hire a full-time content writer, right? On staff, right? For me, because we write for so many niches, it makes no sense, right? Like I work with legal content writers for all my clients, right? But they're subcontractors. So, depending on the business model, look, white label business model works, right? You outsource to a country where minimum wage is a lot lower than US or Canada, right? You build an in-house team there. You have one or two sales reps, and you work with agencies or clients directly, right? So to each, you know what it is, Aaron? I think it's what you want to get out of it. If you're techie and you have access to that resource, as in cheaper labor or cheap labor, you leverage that. If you want to be at the forefront, be the name, that people talk about, shake hands and kiss babies, then maybe you should focus on marketing and consultancy work and kind of outsource part of your back end, right?
Right.
There's a traditional agency where you have 20 people in the office or 50 people in the office, and everybody goes to work and you have corporate parties. And there was a period in the industry where everybody was doing that, right? Like doing the virtual tours, come visit our office. I was always against it. Because to me, it limits your candidate pool when you hire, because they all have to get to your office and you're stuck with local talent. Do you understand what I mean? And I also has always been, I like the lifestyle, although I don't have it, of digital nomad, but some of my staff, they move around the world all the time. And like, I work with people who've lived in 2-3 countries since I started working with them, and I have a rule in the company that everybody, when they go on a long trip, they get a bonus.
Before we kind of get to that point where we've hired some people and we're trying to make sure that they all are a perfect fit with each other, are there any signs that you can see that this person's going to be an asshole? Like before you actually hire them and onboard them?
I really get to the nitty gritty. If you see that they're jumping jobs every year or every 6 months, it's a red flag. If you see that they tried to run their own business, it didn't work out, and they're seeking employment, for me personally, it's a red flag. And I'll explain to you why. Sometimes life circumstances change and these people are very capable, right? And they just want a more stable lifestyle and something more stable because they had a kid or, or health issues or whatever. But as a rule of thumb, in my opinion, a failed entrepreneur might have a negative, outlook, right? And he's settling for, again, going and seeking employment after. Do I want to take that chance? Probably not. You know what I mean? Same thing. You talk to them on an interview. I have exceptionally informal interviews. Like I could swear, I'm not very politically correct, and I see the reaction. And I don't do it on purpose. Sorry, I do it on purpose, right? Because if I'm very proper and I'm on my best behavior, and so are they, obviously, because they're in an interview, they're faking it. Where if I make them relax and I'm being inappropriate, when I say inappropriate, just, like you and I, talking, right? I try to let them ease up and see the different, personality traits and what's what. And I think it's also important to have context of where they are in their life, in their journey, right? Like, I hire, like I work with a lot of women, and for me, it's also, I just had a kid myself, and I understand that childbirth and motherhood is a key aspect of development. So having said that, somebody who's just getting married, right, and just got a job and planning to start a family, right, like I would hire them, but I wouldn't hire them on a position that requires like stress and constant attention, right? Just and they are aware of that, right? And I would tell them how it is, right? If I'm looking for a content manager, for example, hell yeah, you know what I mean? So you have to be aware of where the people are in their life. Sometimes you hire young people, right? And they could be great, but they're not very stable, right? Like, we've all been there, right? They fall under the negative influence. They change their outlook, change their partner. Maybe they want to, they get an idea that they just want to have a nomad lifestyle and they move away and they travel and, like for them, they're in that headspace, they're soul searching. So, I would avoid those.
I'm kind of a little bit happy also that you did mention the first point, which is that you kind of stay away from people who have been jumping jobs. I'm not too sure how it is in America, but I think in India, a lot of people see that as a pro instead of a con. They see that if you stay in a company with 1 or 2 years, you will get a better hike every time you keep switching. But I've always been the type of person who would advocate to stay at a company and, build up your skills in that one company and then go to another one.
I think it's totally normal if you worked somewhere for a year and then you had something that's like year and a half plus, right? But if it's a pattern, I was looking at some resumes earlier as we're hiring, and so my assistant selected them, and one of the people is very capable, and we looked at her last 2 experiences. But if you look at like the last 6 years, it's just like 8 months, a year, 8 months, a year, and it's just like, because by the time you train them and bring them on board, right, you're like 4 to 6 months in when they're fully capable. I don't really, having said that, if they've stayed somewhere for 2-3 years, right, and they have that on their resume, then it's not a bad sign. Again, it's a hit and miss because they might have a valid reason, right? Like some companies, because of COVID or because of like certain conflicts in the world, might shut down or lose clientele. But you usually get a sense of you want to avoid flaky people. Yeah. You want somebody who takes their job seriously. They want to build a career. I always ask them, like, what do you want to do? They're like, what do you mean? I want to work here. Like, I'm like, no. Yeah. No, I'm like, what do you want to do? You want to sail around the world? Like, what makes you tick? Like, what are your hobbies? Right? Because if they don't have an answer for that, and they're like young, especially, and they've switched jobs very often, right? Like that means that they don't know.
When you kind of started it off, did you have a set list of services that you provided, and did that change over the years? In other words, did you niche down?
Yeah, I did. Okay, so we do a lot of legal work at the time. When I was leaving dNOVO, probably 30% of the business was legal clients. And I realized that if I'm starting something from scratch, because the point of entry into the industry is so low, everybody's desperate to get clients and they just market themselves as marketing agencies. I realized I had clients and I had experience under my belt. So if I was going to do this, I was going to do this and target particular industries, right? And build my exposure there. That's number one. Number two, I made this mistake earlier where people would have like, they would need videography, and I have in-house videographers. They would need social media, right? And we try to build like a social media division. This is 10 years ago, right? And I realized that there's no money in some of these things, right? Like, or the type of money that I want. So I really want to focus. And again, some people are very creative. They have a good process for building websites and they get a lot of web work and they can maintain continuous flow of projects, right? And they build the web design studio. Do they do SEO and other stuff? Yes. Some people manage Google Ads and do media buys and have reporting, and they niche out this way. So I think you got to pick your battles. You have to nowadays niche. Like, to do everything, you're not going to do it well. Right. If you're a grandfathered company, like I know some companies on the market that's been there for, I always look at the age of the owner. I went to a conference in the States in February, and 7 digital marketing agencies were on display there. And all those guys behind the booths, like, okay, all the founders of the company are like 45 to 60, 65. Right. I'm turning 37 this year. So to me, it's like they've been at it for a while. So, if you just have clientele here or there, you're established, you get referral sources. But if you're starting something new, or you've started something new, like I would kind of, I think you could also like, think about it. Let's say you're a doctor, or you're, I don't know, in a Shopify website, right? You'd rather work with an agency that specializes on medical or Shopify as opposed to a generic digital marketing agency.
So with dNOVO then, do you feel like in the future you might start offering more services, or
No.
do you feel like this is enough?
I don't want to offer more services. I really, frankly speaking, have one product, and it's either we do it or we don't do it. Like, you either hire us, and I'll explain to you what I mean. Whether they need a new website, I don't really care, right? Because some people call me, they just want a website. I haven't done one of those in 2-3 years. And I tell them how it is. I said, I have a pipeline of projects where, think about it, I work with you, Aaron, and we have a relationship, and I've taken your existing website, patched it up, made it better, and we're doing SEO. Now your website needs a revamp, or you want a revamp, or it technically needs a revamp, right? Like, my priority is you. I'll tell you when that, like I tell you, Aaron, we could probably take another 6 months or a year, but we eventually got to get this done, because your positions will start dropping. So I'd rather put you in the pipeline and work with you on the website than to try to take a chance to do a website, make some money, and same thing with the content, right? I can do your search optimization, but and build you links and do your on page, but we require content. Either I produce it or your team produces it, but so do I do content marketing in terms of like written content? Absolutely, right? If you're in a particular industry and social media is a must in that industry, let's say it's like, cosmetic work for medical work, right? Like plastic surgery, like non-surgical procedures. I'm sorry, but you're not going to be successful unless you have a social media presence. And the way I do it is I facilitate it for them. I always tell the client, I said, imagine what you have to pay me for me to hire somebody else, right, to do your social media, right? And like, we live in Canada, like, like, what they're going to cost me. So I have a series of independent guys I work with, right? I don't charge any of my clients extra for it, and I facilitate it for them, right? I could fine tune their existing social media person to give them some advice or content scheduling or what they should do, right? I have a number of subcontractors that I recommend to my clients if they're serious about it. But in reality, we're consultants, project managers, and people think of it as SEO, but in reality, it's, your content, your map, your web exposure, right? Like, I'm sorry that you can rank really high, but if your website sucks because it doesn't open, it doesn't convert, then you might need a new one, right? So I'd like to call it, I'm the guy that makes your phone ring.
I just have like one question, and it's not really much of a question. It's more of like a promotion for yourself. But in like a 2-minute way, how would you kind of elevator pitch yourself and dNOVO?
I think that we offer a unique perspective. I have a unique way of communicating with my clients, right? It's not your typical, email reports demeanor. I find that I have rock stars on my team, and I'm not talking, because usually in an agency, you deal with one account manager, right? Maybe a technical person once in a while. I don't like that approach. I feel that if I service you as a client and you need strategy, Google Ads management and feedback, social media, and we're changing and making some visuals and creatives for you, right? Like I'd rather, you talk to the source, and I have very capable people who are managing each of these departments. And last but not least, I'm always about competitive advantages. We listen to our friends down south, because I find that the US digital marketing world, when it comes to SEO, pushes the limits. When it comes to Google Ads management and stuff, I find that Canada is just as, if not more capable. That's what I found. And we always have tricks up our sleeves. I love to utilize like SEO and marketing strategies that, they're kind of like very, very particular niche and not everybody uses, right? And I look at powers that be or some of the leaders in the industry to kind of see what they do. And we have those advantages. And I'm also by nature very aggressive. Like I don't really enjoy clients who want to coast, because to me, the problem is like they could be great people. I have a great relationship with them, but it makes my job difficult because, as you know, in SEO and in anything, especially now, there's 8 billion people in the world. If you stay stagnant and keep the same level or maintain it, as they say, you're going to get blown out of the water because somebody who's just aggressive and they want to dominate, So I like clients that they come to me and they're like, grow my business, please. What do I need to do? As opposed to like, we're looking for a marketing partner to we like to maintain, like, do you get what I mean? A bit more passive demeanor, because I could help them more and kind of be there for them more. It's very difficult to long-term maintain someone's exposure where you have competitors who are just investing double the effort, whether it's financial effort or, even attention from the client to the marketing.
Yeah. And where can people find you and dNOVO?
My LinkedIn, I try to be active. And again, remember I told you, pick your poison, right? Like social media is great, but Instagram is not really my crowd. And I mean, they can contact us on our website, dNOVOgroup.com, and find me on LinkedIn, Shamil Shamilov. There's not that many Shamil Shamilovs out there. So,
but thank you so much for this chat, Shamil. I feel like there are a lot of topics that we kind of just went all out in. You kind of gave the most comprehensive version of it as well. So I'm very glad that we had this chat and you kind of educated me on all of this stuff.
Thank you, my friend. Looking forward to it. Cheers, Aaron.
Thanks for watching that episode. I hope you enjoyed. For more videos like this, make sure you like and subscribe.